The hammering had stopped, but my heart hadn't. I stood alone in the kitchen, pretending to busy myself with dishes that didn't need washing. Outside, the sun had started its slow descent, casting long stripes of gold through the windows, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air. But it wasn't the fading light that held my attention. It was the man upstairs, Jason, the contractor. From the moment he arrived that morning, I hadn't been able to shake the awareness of him. Every thud of his boots on my porch, every low murmur of his voice as he spoke about beams and joists, settled into me like a warmth I hadn't realized I'd been missing. He was younger than me, maybe mid-30s, early 40s at most. Too young, I kept reminding myself. Too young for a man like me, who had learned to stop expecting to be seen that way anymore. And yet, every glance he cast my way felt like a possibility I didn't know how to name. I heard the creak of the stairs, and before I could compose myself, Jason appeared in the kitchen doorway. His t-shirt was plastered to his chest with sweat, his hair damp and curling at the edges, his face streaked with dust. But his smile, that easy, grateful smile, was what undid me. "Mind if I use your shower?" he asked, voice low, warm, and threaded with fatigue. The heat in the attic was brutal. I opened my mouth, but no words came for a moment. I just stared, taking in the slope of his shoulders, the way his jeans clung to his hips, the dust on his arms that I wanted irrationally to brush off. Finally, I managed to nod. "Of course, it's just down the hall. First door on the right." Jason's lips curved into something that felt more intimate than a thank you. "You're a lifesaver, Mr. Adams." "Mark," I corrected, my voice rough with nerves I hadn't felt since I was a teenager. His eyes lingered on mine as if tasting the name, and then he turned, his boots heavy on the old floorboards as he headed toward the bathroom. I stood frozen, every muscle taut, every sense sharpened. I heard the door creak, but it didn't shut. Instead, it stayed ajar, a slim sliver of space left between us. The sound of running water filled the house, mingling with the thrum of my pulse. I shouldn't have looked. I knew better. But my feet moved without permission, carrying me a few steps closer. From where I stood, I could see his shadow behind the frosted glass, blurred and softened by steam. His movements were slow, deliberate, as he lifted his arms, water streaming over his skin, tracing the lines of his body. I felt heat bloom in my chest, in my cheeks, lower still, a hunger I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. And as if he sensed me, Jason's voice floated out, easy and casual. "Water pressure's not bad in here." I swallowed, throat dry. "Yeah," I said, voice trembling slightly. "It's an old house, but the plumbing holds up better than the wiring." His laugh, low, rich, genuine, made my knees feel unsteady. "Good to know. I might be up here a while then." I hovered in that doorway of decision, wanting to step away, knowing I should, but unable to. The steam curled out, wrapping around me like a memory of touch. I closed my eyes, breathing it in, letting myself feel, just for a moment, what I'd been missing. The water stopped, and I retreated, heart hammering, back to the kitchen. I gripped the counter, grounding myself in the coolness of the stone beneath my palms. But when Jason appeared again, my resolve crumbled. He stood in the doorway, hair damp and curling, a towel slung low on his hips, bare chest glistening with the last traces of water. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw it, the same flicker of something unspoken, something waiting. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. "Hope I didn't use up all your hot water," he said, but his voice was softer now, intimate, like a secret shared. "No," I said, the word little more than a breath. "No problem at all." But it was, because in that moment, standing there with him, I knew something had shifted between us, something neither of us could pretend wasn't there. Jason lingered in the doorway a moment longer, towel low on his hips, his chest rising and falling as though he too was caught in something he hadn't expected. The light from the kitchen window played across the droplets on his skin, making them glisten like tiny jewels. My gaze flickered away, embarrassed at my own boldness, but not before I saw the way his lips quirked, like he'd noticed. "I'll get dressed and finish up the trim on the windows," he said, his voice softer now, as if we'd crossed into some new, unspoken territory. "Take your time," I replied, and meant it more than I should have. My pulse still hadn't slowed since I'd seen him in the shower, framed by steam and glass like some half-remembered dream. He disappeared up the stairs, leaving behind the faint scent of soap and sawdust. I let out a breath, ran a hand through my hair, and tried to focus on the half-made sandwich on the counter. But my mind was nowhere near lunch. Every sound from upstairs, the creak of the floorboards, the quiet thump of boots set aside, set my nerves alight. When Jason came down again, he'd changed into a fresh t-shirt and clean jeans, though a trace of dampness still darkened the collar of his shirt. His hair, not quite dry, curled boyishly at his temples. He carried himself differently now, looser somehow, or maybe it was just that I saw him differently. "Thanks again for the shower," he said, his eyes holding mine a second too long. "Feels human again." "Glad to help," I said, my voice steadier this time, though inside I was anything but. He glanced toward the sliding glass door that led to the deck, where the late afternoon light slanted in gold and pink. "Mind if I take a break out there? That breeze looks good." "Not at all," I said, gesturing. "Go ahead." I watched as he stepped outside, the screen door creaking behind him. He leaned on the railing, looking out at the yard, the way the trees swayed gently in the breeze. And before I knew it, I was joining him, drawn by some pull I didn't want to resist. The air was cooler outside, carrying the scent of cut grass and the faint promise of rain. We stood side by side, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward, it was charged, full of things unsaid. Finally, Jason shifted, his arm brushing mine, just lightly, but enough to make me inhale sharply. His fingers tapped absently on the railing, so close to mine that a few more inches would have bridged the distance. "This is a good place," he said quietly. "Feels like it's been cared for." I smiled, looking out at the yard I'd tended alone all these years. "It's home. That's all that matters, right?" He turned slightly, studying me now instead of the trees. His gaze was steady, unhurried. "Yeah, that's what matters." The moment stretched, the world narrowing to the space between us, the warmth of his arm against mine, the quiet hum of something new and fragile taking root. And just as I opened my mouth to speak, Jason's phone buzzed in his pocket, shattering the spell. He glanced at it, then at me, regret flickering in his eyes. "I should take this," he said, "but I'll be right back." I nodded, watching him step off the deck, phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and distant. And I stood there, heart pounding, wondering how a man I'd just met could already feel like someone I didn't want to lose. The sun had dipped lower, casting a soft amber glow across the yard by the time Jason returned. He tucked his phone into his back pocket, and for a moment he just stood there at the edge of the deck, as if weighing something. Then, with a quiet resolve, he stepped up and joined me again, his presence as steadying as it was unsettling. "Sorry about that," he said, his voice low, almost apologetic. "Client with a drywall emergency." His smile was wry, his eyes catching the fading light, warm and open. "No problem," I said, though part of me had feared he wouldn't come back. Work never really ends, does it? Jason chuckled, leaning his forearms on the railing beside me. His shoulder brushed mine again, deliberate or accidental, I couldn't tell. Nope, not my line of work, and certainly not at my age. Gotta take the jobs while they come. There was an opening there, subtle but offered. I took it. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking? He glanced at me as if gauging whether the question was safe. 39, just turned actually. He hesitated, then added, I feel older some days. This job'll do that to you. I smiled, looking down at my own hands on the rail, hands lined with age, the skin thinner than it used to be. I'm 61, I said, the number tasting strange on my tongue. And I know exactly what you mean about feeling older some days. Jason was quiet, but not with discomfort. When I glanced at him, his gaze was thoughtful. You wear it well, Mark. That simple phrase, sincere, unforced, settled over me like a balm. I hadn't realized how long it had been since someone had said anything like that to me, since someone had seen me that way. A breeze stirred and Jason shifted slightly, turning to face me more fully. His arm pressed against mine, firmer this time, the warmth of him unmistakable. You're not like most of my clients, he said. They're always barking orders or complaining about costs. But you? He paused, searching for the right word. You make this feel like more than just a job. My breath caught. The air between us felt charged again, like it had in the kitchen, like it had when I'd watched him through that sliver of open door. And when he reached out, slow, measured, and let his fingers brush lightly against the back of my hand on the railing, I didn't pull away. I couldn't have, even if I'd tried. His touch was warm, calloused from work, but gentle. His thumb grazed my knuckles, a simple contact, yet it sent a shiver up my spine that left me breathless. The world felt suspended in that moment. No sound but the whisper of the breeze, no thought but the shared heat of that touch. Then, from somewhere inside the house, the chime of the oven timer went off, a jarring reminder of reality. Jason drew his hand back, but not in haste, not with regret. His eyes held mine, steady, as if promising this wasn't over. I should check on that, I said, voice soft. Yeah, Jason said, his smile small, but sure. Me too. Should get back to work. But he paused, lingering. Thanks for the break. And as he turned back toward the house, I realized I was already counting the minutes until the next one. The evening deepened as Jason returned to work, the last rays of sunlight fading behind the trees. From the kitchen window, I watched him through the soft gloom, moving with easy precision as he measured, cut, and fitted trim along the windows he'd promised to finish. His focus, his quiet competence, stirred something in me I hadn't felt in years. Admiration, yes, but also that delicate ache of wanting to be near him, to share more than small talk and passing touches. I set dinner aside, unable to eat, and stepped out onto the porch again. The air was cooler now, carrying the clean scent of fresh wood and the lingering hint of Jason's soap from earlier. I cleared my throat gently, not wanting to startle him. He glanced over his shoulder, his face breaking into that easy smile that by now felt like a gift every time he offered it. Could I get you something? Water? A beer? I asked, feeling oddly shy despite being on my own porch. Jason straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans. A beer would be great if you're sure. I'm sure, I said, already heading inside. When I returned with 2 cold bottles, he'd set his tools down and was leaning against the railing, waiting for me. Our fingers brushed as I handed him his beer, that fleeting contact sending a familiar warmth spiraling through me. Thanks, Mark, he said, his voice low, rich with fatigue and something softer beneath. He took a long pull from the bottle, then let out a satisfied sigh. Been a long day. We stood together, sipping our beers in companionable silence, watching as the sky darkened and the first stars began to appear. The quiet wasn't awkward. It felt natural, easy, like we'd done this before, like we'd do it again. Jason shifted, angling his body toward me, his arm once more close enough that our sleeves brushed. His hand rested on the railing, fingers near mine. He tapped the wood lightly, as if thinking aloud. "It's funny," he said. "I don't usually feel this at ease with people I work for, but here, I don't know, feels different." "It is different," I said before I could stop myself, and then, more carefully, "At least it feels that way to me too." He looked at me then, really looked, his gaze steady, searching. His hand moved, slow and deliberate, closing the last few inches between us. His fingers found mine on the railing, brushing lightly at first, then settling, his grip warm and sure. I felt his thumb stroke gently across the back of my hand, a simple gesture, but it sent my heart racing all over again. "I don't want to overstep," Jason said quietly, his voice barely more than a breath. "But I don't want to pretend either." My breath hitched. "You're not overstepping." He exhaled, relieved, and his fingers tightened slightly on mine. The moment stretched, the night deepening around us, the world narrowing to just that shared touch, the quiet hum of connection between us. And then, somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled, soft at first, then louder, closer. Jason glanced at the darkening sky, his hand still on mine. "Looks like we're in for a storm." "Yeah," I said, but I wasn't thinking of the weather. Not at all. The first drops of rain tapped against the deck boards, soft at first, then steadier, like the rhythm of a drum slowly building. Jason didn't move, neither did I. His hand remained on mine, fingers warm despite the cooling air, as if neither of us wanted to break whatever it was that had settled between us. The storm arrived fast. The sky split with a flash of lightning, followed almost instantly by the crack of thunder. The rain came harder now, a sudden curtain that blurred the yard and darkened the world beyond the porch light's reach. Jason looked out at it, then back at me, his smile easy, his eyes alight with something I didn't dare name. "Well," he said, his voice soft over the drum of rain, "guess that's my excuse to stop for the night." "You don't need an excuse," I replied, surprising myself with how sure I sounded. "Stay dry. Come inside." There was a pause, a heartbeat where we both seemed to weigh what that invitation meant. Then he nodded, squeezing my hand gently before letting go. We stepped inside together, shaking off the rain. I grabbed a towel from the back of a chair and handed it to him. "Thanks," Jason said, rubbing it over his hair, the gesture casual but intimate in its own way. His shirt clung to him now, damp from the edges of the storm. Without thinking, I reached out, brushing a droplet from his jaw. My thumb lingered there, feeling the roughness of stubble, the warmth beneath. Jason froze for just a second, not pulling away, not startled, but aware. His eyes met mine, and in that look, I felt the weight of everything unsaid between us. He leaned in, slow, as if giving me time to change my mind. But I didn't move, couldn't move. The space between us closed, and when his forehead touched mine, it felt like the gentlest storm of all. The house seemed to fall silent, the rain beyond the windows a distant hush compared to the roar of my own pulse. His breath mingled with mine, warm and close. His hand rose, fingers brushing my cheek, tucking behind my ear, resting at the nape of my neck. The touch grounded me, made everything else fall away. And then, at last, his lips found mine. The kiss was soft, searching, a question asked and answered in the same breath. It wasn't rushed, wasn't hungry, just real and right and needed. His mouth was warm, the taste of rain and beer, and something I hadn't let myself hope for in far too long. When we parted, it was only by an inch. Jason's thumb traced along my jaw, his smile small, genuine. "Been wanting to do that all day," he admitted, voice low like sharing a secret. "Me too," I whispered, the words trembling with relief. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, the world had narrowed to the closeness between us, the promise of something I hadn't known I was still brave enough to want. For a while, we simply stood there, caught in the quiet after the kiss, as if both of us were afraid to move and break whatever fragile magic had taken hold. Outside, the rain pounded harder, wind rattling the windows, but in that small circle of warmth between us, the storm felt far away. All I could feel was the heat of Jason's body so close to mine, the lingering pressure of his lips, the gentle weight of his hand still resting at the back of my neck. Jason's thumb traced a slow line along my jaw, and his forehead tipped forward until it rested against mine again. His breath was steady, warm against my skin. "You sure about this?" he murmured, his voice a low rumble that sent a shiver down my spine. I closed my eyes, letting myself lean into him just enough that our bodies met from shoulder to hip. "I've never been more sure of anything," I said, the truth of it surprising even me. That seemed to ease something in him. His other hand found my waist, fingers splaying wide, grounding me. The feel of him, solid, warm, real, was almost too much. For so long I'd convinced myself I didn't need this anymore, that this kind of closeness wasn't for men my age. But here he was, and here I was, and nothing had ever felt more right. Jason tilted his head, brushed his lips over mine again, slower this time, more certain. The kiss deepened, but never rushed. His hand slid up my back, fingers pressing through the fabric of my shirt, leaving trails of heat in their wake. I mirrored the gesture, my hand rising to his shoulder, feeling the strength there, the way his muscles tensed beneath my touch. When we broke apart again, it was only to catch our breath. Jason smiled, soft and genuine, his forehead still resting against mine. "I wasn't expecting this when I took the job," he said, a quiet laugh in his voice. "Neither was I when I hired you," I admitted, "but I'm glad." We stood that way as the storm raged outside, two men finding something unexpected in the middle of the downpour. Jason's thumb stroked my hip through my shirt, a small, comforting gesture that made my chest ache in the best way. His presence filled the room, filled me, and I didn't want the night to end. Then a sudden gust of wind rattled the windows hard enough that I startled, and Jason tightened his hold, steadying me. "Hey," he said softly, his lips close to my ear. "I've got you." And in that moment, I believed him. The storm showed no sign of letting up. The rain lashed against the house, and the wind moaned through the trees. But inside, it felt as if time had slowed. Jason's arms wrapped around me, not in haste or hunger, but in that way that says, "You're safe here, I'm not going anywhere." And in his embrace, I realized how long it had been since I'd felt this. Not just the warmth of another's body, but the comfort, the quiet promise in a touch that asked for nothing but gave everything. His hand stroked slow up and down my back, steady and grounding. The simple rhythm of it eased something in me I hadn't even known was tight. My own arms found their way around him, one hand resting at his lower back, the other splaying across his shoulder. I felt the strength in him, the solidness, and let myself lean in, let myself trust. For a long moment, we didn't speak. There was no need. The storm outside, the soft creak of the house settling, the steady sound of our breaths, those were the only sounds that filled the space. And then Jason shifted, just slightly, pulling back enough to look at me. His eyes were warm, searching mine, as if memorizing this moment. "You're something else, Mark," he said, voice low, a little rough at the edges. "Didn't expect to feel this way when I came here, but now, I don't want to leave." My throat tightened. I swallowed hard, brushing my thumb along his jaw, feeling the scratch of his stubble beneath my fingers. "Then don't," I said, the words out before I could question them. "Stay, at least until the storm passes." Jason's smile deepened, soft but sure. "I was hoping you'd say that." He leaned in again, and this time the kiss was unhurried, lingering. His lips moved against mine with a tenderness that spoke of care, of desire tempered by patience. His hand rose to cup my face, thumb tracing the curve of my cheek, his fingers gentle but sure. The world outside faded, leaving only the press of his mouth, the warmth of his touch, the steady thrum of connection between us. When we parted, his forehead rested against mine, his breath warm and even. His fingers found mine, lacing them together, holding tight. "Let me help you close up the house," he said, glancing toward the dark windows. "Then maybe we can sit, talk, see where the night takes us." And in his voice, I heard it, that quiet hope that matched my own. I nodded, heart full, and together we turned toward the house, toward whatever came next, the storm still raging but no longer the loudest thing in my world. We moved through the house together, closing windows, drawing curtains against the storm's fury. Jason's presence beside me felt as natural as if he'd always been here, as if the space had been waiting for him to fill it. Every small gesture, the way his hand brushed mine as we reached for the same latch, the quiet smile we shared when our shoulders bumped, deepened the connection we'd found. When the house was secure and the wind howled harmlessly beyond the walls, we settled in the living room. The soft glow of a lamp lit the space, casting warm pools of light on worn furniture, old wood, and two men who, for all their years apart, now seemed drawn together by the simplest of things: shelter, comfort, understanding. Jason sat close, his knee resting against mine, his arms stretched along the back of the couch. We talked, really talked, about the storm, about work, about small things that somehow felt important now. And when words gave way to quiet, there was no awkwardness, only the steady hum of something real, something neither of us had expected, but both were ready to welcome. At one point, Jason reached out, his hand finding mine again, fingers threading together like it was the most natural thing in the world. His thumb stroked slow over my knuckles, grounding me in the moment. The storm outside might have raged, but inside I felt calm, seen, wanted. "I'm glad I came here," Jason said, his voice soft, as if sharing a truth he'd only just realized. "Not just for the work, for this?" I turned, meeting his gaze, the warmth in it, steady and sure. Me too. And then, slowly, deliberately, he leaned in, his lips finding mine in a kiss that spoke of promise, of tenderness, of beginnings. It wasn't rushed, wasn't about the storm or the night or the shelter we'd found. It was about us. Two men, two lives crossing at just the right time, in just the right way. When the storm finally eased and the rain softened to a quiet patter against the roof, we stayed there, close, content, and unhurried. Outside, the world washed clean. Inside, so did we. Because sometimes a man comes to fix your house, and sometimes, without meaning to, he fixes your heart too.